Hi, my name is Shreya, and I'm a rising sophomore here at UT Austin, and I'm currently a intern at InternXus. And today we have Miss Katie here to help film a podcast and give us a little bit of insight into the value of internships and how that can help shape a career path. So, Miss Katie, do you want to give us a little introduction?
Sure. My name's Katie Nguyen. I lead recruiting for Pallet Management. And for the last decade, I've been recruiting within tech and other startups. And I was a former university recruiter as well.
Thank you so much. So let's get started. Our first segment is the value of internships. So, based on your experience as a recruiter and working for a university, why do you think it's important for students, particularly in college or even like high school, to pursue an internship?
Sure. I think with internships, it's such a great place for you to really discover what it is that you want to do. I remember when I was in high school and even in college, there were so many different career paths that I could see for myself. I thought about pursuing journalism, I thought about entertainment, I was getting a business degree. So I thought maybe my path might lead me there. And I wasn't ever confident in any of those areas from the start. And so I thought, what better way to really understand and see if this path was right for me by doing a short term internship? So, something that is about 3 to 4 months and really gives me a chance to sort of be in that space and do the actual work to see if that's what I want to pursue long term.
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, growing up, I wanted to become a veterinarian, and which is very different for what I'm in school right now for. But I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I worked at a vet clinic for like 2 years. That was my first job, and then I realized after that experience that maybe this is not like what I want to do because there's actually so much that you can learn about a job when you're actually doing it or interacting with people who have been in the industry for such a long time. And like for example, for like veterinary medicine, I didn't know that like the business of actually running a clinic is like really big. There's some struggles within the veterinary, like owning clinics and stuff like that. So like I think whatever I completely agree, like it really gets to show you like what you actually like. And I
Mhm.
think it's a really good investment for students to like kind of experience everything without like the possibility of failing because it's not a full-time job, it's an internship.
Right. And I think when we're so young too, it's easy to sort of glamorize like a potential career path. And then once you're in it, like you realize like maybe that's not exactly what you wanted. And because it's like short term and an internship, you can just move on to the next thing. But I've talked to so many people that have said to me like internships are the best way to sort of I guess I talked to one candidate recently. She gave me an analogy of saying that doing internships is kind of like being on a playground and like trying out different toys or different things that you want to see if that's like where you want to spend most of your time. And then once you're done with it, you can move on to the next thing before you actually land in your career.
Yeah. And I know that you like have been working in recruiting for a while and also have seen like the side of working with universities. And like a few years ago, like COVID was like a big thing, right? So how do you think like internships, like people's relationships or even the internship market like changed during that, if you have like an opinion on it?
Oh gosh, it's been a while. I'm gonna
Yeah.
age myself, but I have no idea what it was like to try and find an internship during the pandemic. I imagine it must have been really difficult. I would say, when I was a university recruiter, one of the best parts about working with our interns was that they had a cohort around them. They were able to sort of build a community, work closely with them. We were able to create events and activities where they could meet other interns within the Bay Area and also just spend time getting to know the Bay Area, and have sort of like a summer camp type vibe. But during the pandemic, I imagine it must have been really hard and even more isolating. And because you were in some ways sort of feeling like you were losing time because of the pandemic, maybe people would have this notion that they didn't want to waste some time doing an internship that was remote. So maybe they spent that time pursuing other passions, and other interests. And so I feel like there were a lot of people that sort of expedited what they knew they wanted to do and were going after those things instead because they had so much time to think about that.
Yeah, I so like I did not like, luckily, I was in ninth grade when COVID hit, so I was not like in the internship process, but um, I know that I think it actually brought people to like be comfortable with like online searching for internships much more, and gave them the time to do that. But also like now that we're discussing how important internships could be for someone's career, um, that finding an internship is also like something that's really important and people might not know of, especially in high school. I didn't even know that internships were something that were like as necessary as they might be for the job market in the current day. So what is your input on how people can go about searching for internships?
Yeah, I'm starting to think back to like my own experience finding internships. So my first internship was actually while I was in high school. I was 17 and I interned at this place called Kirkland Teen Union Building. So it was actually kind of like more of a community center for youth. And that internship kind of fell in my lap in some ways because I spent a lot of time there myself. They used to throw a lot of concerts with local bands. And that was something that I spent a lot of my time doing when I was in high school. And I think I had seen on their website that they had internships, but because I was there so often, I knew the staff. And I just told them, hey, I really love coming here. I love your mission and what you do for other kids. I want to be a part of learning how the music industry works in Seattle. Can I intern for you all? And at that time, most internships were unpaid. Like the majority of my internships were unpaid. And it was fine because I was still in high school, but that one kind of just fell into my lap. So I would say when you're first kicking off your search about internships, think about what you enjoy the most. Where do you spend your time? What are you passionate about? And then send out the cold emails. Just meet with people in the industry. Get your name out there, go network, be in spaces where you think that you might meet people that could help you along the way. My other internships once I was in college kind of came from uh we had a site on our university that would aggregate a bunch of different jobs locally. Some of them were full time, some of them were internships, and so I found the majority of them through there. I did a film and marketing and publicity internship for films one summer. I was really interested in writing, so I worked with College Fashionista, and I did like a off cycle winter internship. That one I found on my own because I already love the website, but a lot of them I got through my university's like career center, which was super helpful for me.
Yeah, actually, in UT we have like our own database for like internships,
Yeah.
but like I that's actually like the internships that you did sound like so fun and like so niched, and I think like a lot of people, especially like for example, I'm going into like finance, right? So like internships is something that's been talked about for a while, but there's a lot of like career paths that have internships that people are not like aware of that there may be internships in certain fields. So I think like finding internships regardless of what like career path you're going in is like possible and like should be probably seeked out. And I also wanted to ask like unique to you, I know that you're doing like recruiting right now and you used to work like in the university sector. How do you think like your opinion on finding internships and that process like changed um in both like roles that you were in? Did you get like new insights or like new perspectives on the process?
I would say it's so different now looking for an internship than when I was before or when I was sort of coming up because we didn't really have LinkedIn as a resource. Like I think like back when I was in college, most of the people I knew were just starting to create a LinkedIn, but there's so many more tools and resources. And I think something that's really interesting too is like Gen Z is so I don't want to use the word shameless, but they're not afraid to like network
Yeah.
and put themselves out there in a way that my age group, like millennials, were back then. And I will admit this myself, like now being on the other side of a university recruiter, I was so timid when I was a college student. I hated going to networking and career fairs because generally I'm not a competitive person. And if you get into that room of a career fair, and I don't know if you've been in this yourself, but it
I
can be
have.
really, it's chaotic.
Yeah, and there's
Um,
so many people walking around with
there's
resumes. Yeah.
Totally. And so I've given this advice to people now when I make content, which is like, if you're someone like me who has a little bit of social anxiety, and I know that's like a strange thing to hear from a recruiter, but there are some recruiters that are not always extroverted or not outwardly that way. And sometimes we have introverted tendencies as well, to go to the career fairs near the end, because a lot of the people will come right when it opens. And I get that mentality. Or maybe it's like what makes sense for your schedule. But in the beginning, the recruiters that are on the other side of the table, they are doing their best to manage their time and get through the line of folks. And so you only have so much time with a recruiter. And so you're like finding that you're speaking very quickly, that you're a little bit more nervous because of the environment around you, because it's so loud and chaotic. And as the candidate, you may be wanting to try and hit up as many tables as you can. But if you come near the end, um, there isn't that like rush mentality, and you can kind of take your time with it. The other piece of advice that I would give to candidates that are meeting recruiters at a career fair too is use that time to really make yourself stand out and talk to them about your interests and ask them certain questions. This is not the time to rattle off your resume. And that's something that I made a mistake of when I was younger and in college. But if you think about it, you're giving them your resume, they have that stuff on file, so they'll take that with them. But you've got to use that time to talk about what isn't on your resume. And some of those things are really telling them like what your career ambitions are. Why are you excited about that company? So really tailoring and being specific.
Yeah, and I think like even when you mention like why someone's interested about like a certain company, especially during career fairs, I think it's really important for people when they're looking for internships or jobs or just meeting people, networking, to know about them and like know about the company that they're trying to like apply for, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something that people sometimes rush. And I think it shows sometimes, right? But like, what's your opinion about it, like as a recruiter? Do you notice it when people take the extra time to like research the companies that they're applying for or like people they're networking with?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I see this now even as I'm meeting candidates that are applying for like full-time roles that are not even just internships. But I think a big flag to me is that, when I'm getting on the phone with a candidate and the first thing that they say right off the bat is, I'd love to learn more about your company.
Mhm.
Um, and that tells me they didn't really do the research. And so that concerns me a little bit, because the best way to like have a more productive phone call is that you already know about the company, and like then I'm impressed by what you're telling me that you already know about us, and we can just jump into the questions in your experience. But if we're using a chunk of the time of me explaining what the company does when all that information is readily out there, then we're not using our time wisely.
Yeah, and I also think that like going to what you're saying, when you know about the company that you're applying for, it makes for such an like much easier conversation because
Yeah.
like now you can actually make a story for yourself for that person. You're not just someone else who's applying. You can talk about who you are and why, getting a job at this company or working for this company helps like you and your story and what you want to do. So I think like that's actually like it's the same thing that you do for like applying for colleges, right? When they say like
Yeah.
why this college, you can't like write an answer and be like, well, the college, like tell me about yourself, right? They want you to know where you're applying to because just as much as a company might be a fit for you, you have to be like a good fit for the company. Um,
Yeah.
so like I also now that we talked about like how it's like you can find internships and how there's multiple like opportunities available. Could you talk a little bit about like with your experience, how someone can like craft or make a really standout application um, as a recruiter?
Hmm. I I think it is not enough to just apply to jobs and like wait and see what happens.
Mhm.
If you have the means or the resources to do this, it would be great if you could find out like who is in the company, either on the talent team Or I've noticed this too, when we have open roles at my company at Pallet, people will apply to the positions, but then they will send an email to someone. So I'm a team of one on the recruiting team, but they may message someone who's like a talent manager or on the accounting and finance side. And my team members will always forward those applications to me. So
Hmm.
it's just another way to kind of get that flagged over to me and like on in my inbox for me to look at because I'm getting so many applications. I'm doing my best to go through all of them, but again, I am a team of one. And so the fastest way is sometimes through another employee. And so I think that is a tactic that people have been using recently. It's not enough to just like message me directly, but they'll message someone on my team because they know that it will get forwarded to me. But I think it's also like a little goes a long way. And I know some of these things feel maybe a little bit annoying or like an extra added thing, but they do help. So it's like creating a really personalized cover letter or sending a cold email. Those still get to people. Sometimes they don't, right? It's a, like kind of a gamble, but in the off chance that it does get to the right person, they can be really useful. I think also, let's see, sending a thank you note. It's just like expressing that gratitude for someone's time. It is, I want to make it really clear. It is not one of those things that is a make or break in the interview process. So if someone doesn't send a thank you note, that doesn't mean that I won't move them forward. But sometimes it can be helpful, even just like as a cover letter, too. It's like you have an additional data point. And I think
Hmm.
as many additional data points that you can have as a candidate can really make you stand out. So why not do all those things?
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, in UT, like we have a class that's just for like it's called like Management 101. And so we just learn about like the importance of like sending thank you letters out and how to network
Yeah.
properly and how to like structure a really good cover letter. And based on that, like, do you think it's valuable for people who are like writing their resumes or doing cover letters or applications to like use like new AI tools to like help like I don't know, like check it over, or can you tell when something is like AI, not generated, but like processed?
First off, I love that UT has a class like that. I feel like so many people in my age group would wish that something like that existed because no one tells you how to network. No one teaches you what the best way to do that is, and you're kind of just going in blindly. I think what an amazing time right now to have different AI resources. I will fully admit when I'm creating LinkedIn posts, sometimes I will use the AI tool
Mhm.
because I won't go in with it fully because I still want it to sound like me. But there are days where I just don't have the creative juices flowing and I need a little bit of inspiration. So maybe I'll use the AI tool and then I'll cut some pieces out and then add in my own commentary and keep some things in there. I think use the AI tools, but we can tell when it doesn't feel like
Like a
you.
person?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like or that it's just like yeah, that it's not true to your personality. Like even now in interviews, I'll be meeting with candidates and I can fully tell when someone is like reading off something, right? Because their eyes are looking off the screen. And you know, I even noticed this with a candidate the other day, and I'm not saying that it was like AI based or anything like that, but I noticed it and I let her know. I was like, "Are you reading off something right now?" And she was
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous." And I was like, I totally understand, but I was like, you can feel comfortable, like, you know this stuff, like, this is your experience, and I just wanted to give her a little bit of reassurance that, like, yes, interviewing can be scary, it's stressful, but, like, it also hurts your process sometimes when you're just reading off something when you fully know it. So I'll say the same thing about AI too, is it's a great resource to have, but you should never be fully leaning on it because we can tell that it doesn't feel authentic to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I like this even translates to like what I remember like in school, you can't just like chat GPT an essay. Like it has to be something that like has some value, right? So and I think people are just doing sometimes can do themselves like a disservice if you're not putting you're not putting your best foot forward. And like your best foot forward, you only like develop it and get to know what it is when you actually like try to put your
Yeah,
best foot forward. And I
totally.
know that,
Oh,
oh, go
I was
ahead.
just add one more piece, which is that a lot of recruiters and interviewers are trained to ask follow-up questions. You know, they want to dig deeper into your experience, and that is something that AI might not be able to help you with on the spot.
Mhm. I completely agree. And I know you talked a little bit about it, but how do you think after, you apply for an internship and job and you like score that interview, how do you think it's the best way to like prepare? I know we talked about like researching what like the company that you're actually like applying for and, not just using AI to like really like practice your answers, but like when you interviewed people or when you talk to people, um, how do you think like people should best prepare to like, put their best foot forward?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many ways to prepare, and there's not one way that fits for anyone. So I would say do what is best for you and like in how you research, but I'll give you a few avenues here, which is that, spend some time on the website, comb through the website. I currently work for a creator management firm, and I will say when I talk with candidates who tell me like, "Oh, I've looked at some of your creators on your roster. And I really love when they do X, Y, and Z, or I love this article that you were featured in." That like speaks volumes to me. I love to hear that people took the time to look this up because I don't always send over those resources. As a recruiter, we do our best to try and prepare because we want them to do well. We want our candidates to succeed and make it far in the interview process. But there's so much that candidates can do on their own. So it's like looking at their website, looking at their LinkedIn page, looking up articles that they're written in, spending time understanding the space. Who are some of their competitors? And really understanding like what kinds of trends are coming up in the space too that you can talk about or that you can mention. Think about, when you are in the company probably and as like future looking ahead, like what are some ideas that you have that you find really interesting? And then I think lastly is like asking super thoughtful questions. There is a lot on the internet right now where people will tell you what questions they think you should ask. And then the candidate goes into the interview with me and they'll ask those questions. But on my end, I'm like, but why do you care about that question? And I think one
Mhm.
of those questions that is completely overdone is what is the culture like at your company? And the
Mhm.
reason why I say this is because the person on the other side at the company is never going to tell you, oh, the culture here is bad.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so it's subjective, but there are so many things that make up part of what the culture is at a company. So
That you can ask about. Yeah.
yeah, figure out what is most important to you. Is it, your relationship with your manager? Is it mentorship? Is it, growth within the company? Is it work-life balance? And really hone in on those questions. I think my favorite one is like if a company has a set of company values on their website or posted somewhere, ask, "Oh, I noticed that you have this value that is really important to the company. How does that show up in the day to day? How
It
does that
is not.
show up within the environment?" That is a question that really tells you what the culture is like. But asking what the culture is like generally, like, I don't know what it is that you care about. Is it the perks and benefits? Is it like, the fun stuff? Is it remote working culture? But it's just not specific enough these days.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Actually, for like I'm interviewing for like some internships for 2025 because they already
Oh, good
came
luck.
out. So, oh, thank you. But I know like one of the companies that I was interviewing for, they had like service as one of their big values.
Mhm.
And I like asked the interviewer about that because like that's also something that's very like important to me. And I asked
Yeah.
them like how did that show up in like the culture at your firm and how can like I get involved in that if I wanted to. And like she like she told me a wonderful answer, but I was like, and then she told me that she doesn't get questions like that often. And I was like completely surprised because like it's actually like one of the first three things that you can see on their website. And so I think it's really important. And I think values are something actually something important, like something people who are interviewing it's something that could tell you if you really like the company and could
Mhm.
give you an insight into the company while you're interviewing versus you figure it out while you after you get the job that oh this company might not like align with what I want to do.
Yeah, I always tell people, and it's really hard because you only have so much time, but
Mhm.
like really try and ask the questions that are most important to you because that is going to give you the most confidence in deciding on that offer and kind of shapes a little bit of what you can prepare for in your future experience.
Yeah. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about like it's a bit more of a specific question, but like within the field of internships, this is also something that like I've been thinking about. Is it more important to like specialize in like a certain field or some with your internship opportunities, or would you rather like recommend someone like explore several different fields before like committing to one? I know both are like a valid option. Like if you, I mean, if you really want to be a doctor, probably want to specialize. But could you talk about like based on your experience, even like when you went to university and maybe what some of your friends did, um, what your opinions are on both of them?
Yeah, 100%. I would say the biggest mistake is not doing any internships at all during your university career. It just means that you are steps behind your peers when you are graduating. So you want to be able to have that experience because even as a university recruiter, I would look at hundreds of resumes, thousands sometimes. And if we see candidates that have no type of working experience at all, it is really tough. Even if the job is entry level, you're going to want to pick someone that has been in a type of working environment before. It already makes you a more attractive candidate. I think I didn't know this back then, but now looking back at my internship experience, I would say earlier on, I was trying a bunch of different things. As I mentioned before, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do journalism or entertainment. And so I kind of got those out of the way early on. But the last internship I would say is probably like your most important before you go into the working world. And that internship for me ended up being an HR internship at a finance firm. I didn't
Hmm.
have aspirations to work in finance. But because I had a business management degree, I knew maybe I would fall into like HR of some sort, but I didn't even know at that point that it was recruiting. But that ultimately was where I landed because in my HR internship, I had a mentor who was the head of recruiting at that firm. And he was the one that ended up telling me when I was wrapping up my internship, oh, you might want to try both agency recruiting and in house recruiting. And he kind of set me off on that path.
Hmm.
So I would say keep it broad if you want early on because you have the flexibility to do that. But as you continue to progress throughout your university career, kind of hone in on like where you think you might want to be and get a little bit more specific. And if you do really well in that internship right before you graduate, that could turn into a full time opportunity. And that is completely a win win for both sides because, the company already knows your work ethic. You've basically been doing a whole interview process throughout an internship, and then they don't have to train anyone else or start the interview process again. And then for you, you get to just like convert over into an opportunity, and it looks really great on your resume too.
Yeah. And actually, this is like a follow-up question that I've been like thinking about. So like I want to go into finance, right? And so like I already usually like senior year like internships usually turn into like full-time offers, especially like at UT. But I know that like not a lot of people get finance internships like for example like freshman year. It's like I'm doing like a growth internship and I'm doing like some statistical modeling and like other projects on the side. But whenever you're recruiting for jobs, do you look at it like unfavorably when someone like has internship experience that is like not focused on the field that you're recruiting for, or does it matter?
I mean, so generally when I was doing university recruiting, I was hiring for software engineers, data scientists, product managers that were going into those internships. So, um they did have relevant experience, but I also think like there's so many ways that you can tell a story.
Hmm.
And my background, my internship experience was all over the place but then I
Mhm.
ended up in a 10 plus year career. Um, I thought I was going to go into music, and that was my very first internship. And I related that experience back into recruiting because even though it was a very different industry, I was spending time, reaching out to bands. I was doing a lot of like cold emailing and I was looking at contracts and marking them up. You can always tell the story, but I think at the end of the day, like having experience is better than no
Oh,
experience. And
so.
people give a lot of grace to university students because that is the time when you're supposed to explore. Um, I would be surprised if you did like 3 internships that were all on
Oh,
finance.
wow.
I
Yeah.
think that's great, but also like you're learning so many valuable skills and you're really just helping yourself become a more well-rounded individual right now.
Mhm. I agree, and I hope like I'm like doing that right now.
Yeah.
So that now that we talked, so let's say like you do the an amazing interview and you like get the offer and you're doing this internship. What's your opinion on like a student or like someone who has an internship like really maximizing that experience and getting the most out of it? What should they do like in their role or within that company to really get the best experience possible?
Oh gosh. It just makes me think of all the outstanding interns that I've worked with in the past and, where they are at now.
Mhm,
Because they were always like this, even as an intern. But I think the best interns or the best way to make the best use of your time is to be a sponge and hit the ground running and learn everything that you can. So if you're in a small company or a startup, get to know everyone, spend some time with
mhm,
them, understand like their background and experience, and always be that person that is willing to help out and raise your
mhm,
hand. Because if you're not going to do that, someone else is going to do that. And ask for feedback, which I think is something that Gen Zers do really, really well at, is like they
mhm,
constantly want to improve. They want that feedback. And they want to know, what they're doing well at, but also where they could be improving too.
mhm,
Um, and I would say, even as an intern, no task is like too small. And so I think too, the people that are constantly solutionizing and thinking about things, I'm going to give an example that I use every time I am on the side of recruiting and I'm hiring people. The people that I always want to hire are the people that are kind of seeing around corners. And it's the type of person that when you see an issue, you could be like one of 3 people. The first one is like you see the problem, you see the issue, but you're like, someone else is going to take care of that. Or you see the issue and the problem and you're like, I will get to it if it happens again. So you're like, maybe it's just like an anomaly. It might not happen again a second time, but if it does, I'll take care of it then because then it's a known issue. The person that I want to hire is the third person. They are the
mhm,
ones that see the issue, they identify it, they come up with a solution, and then they communicate it out to anyone that is involved, but they've already taken care of it because they already know it is going to come up again. So it's that
mhm,
person that takes actionable steps and doesn't let it just like fly by or let someone else take the fall for it. Those are the people that I think are some of the best hires. And it's like, maybe in a larger company, the first or second person, like it's okay. But when you're in a smaller environment or a startup, like you need to be that third person.
mhm.
And it's going to really be so valuable to a company.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like being proactive within
Yeah.
your internship, like I think not only shows people like your work ethic, but I think you get the most out of the internship as well. Like I work for like 2 startups right now as an intern, and I've gotten like the most rewarding experiences when I do more than what's expected of me. Um, and I think like especially like working with startups, like you actually get to see more of your impact when you seek out to do more. So I like completely agree. And like I'm so thankful for like you hopping on this call. Do you have like any other like feedback or like last minute advice for students who want to get internships, or just anyone in the job market, or like just anyone.
Yeah, I would say with internships, they go by so quickly. And as a university student, technically you can do a minimum of 3 internships during your time there and really try to find a way to maximize it and do internships because they're interesting to you.
Mhm.
Don't be an intern just to be an intern and like kind of slack off in the summer. Like you are in control of like what you make the most of that time and it's going to go by so quickly. I look back at all of my internships and I'm so grateful for the experiences and I've been able to take learnings from each of them that have been able to help me throughout my career. So I would say, when you're looking at internships, be really thoughtful, figure it out, what it is that you're interested in and passionate about and go for it. And
Mhm.
send those cold emails. Like I spent
Yeah.
so much time applying and rejection is hard, but it is just a normal part of this process. And you'll be so grateful once you do get the acceptance and the offers. And so, yeah, it will be a large part of your working experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, have confidence, like, put yourself out there, and then really like make most of all the opportunities and experiences that come your way. And like, I feel like internships are really like an opportunity in all senses. And it's something that I think should probably be talked about more, especially in high school. I think high schoolers can also get internships. Like
Yeah.
I've been telling my brother, and he's younger than me, and he's in high school. And I was like, yeah, bro, like do your part-time job, but also like do internships within the fields that you want to go into if you don't know what you want to do yet. I think that's also a really good way to figure out like what you want to do. Like before you get to college, you're like, oh, I have to like choose a major. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also like make things into internships. Like my first internship, I didn't really even know that that was a possibility. And I think I remember when I was talking to my mentor back then, he was like, "Oh, it's probably going to be like 5 or 7 hours a week or maybe less than that." And I was like, "No, I'm going to do more. I'm going to spend more time at this internship because I want to."
Mhm.
Yeah, there's never a time where it's like too early to get started. I love the initiative and I think that is something that I am excited to see in this next generation of students.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much, Katie. And I'm so sure that everyone will take so much great feedback and advice from this call and podcast, and I can't wait for people to see it. And you've taught me a lot, and I loved our conversation. I would love to stay in contact. So, any like last pieces of like comments?
I think that's it. I mean, I know we're in the summertime right now, but no time is better than now than to like get your resume ready and get ready for those career fairs because I think they do happen like early on.
Yeah,
And
finance
then
already started
yeah,
recruiting for next summer, so.
yeah, early on. They also happened like several times during the year, I would say. And if you can snag like internships even on off cycle, not just summer, like I did one during the winter, or I got some of mine extended so that they were like 7 or 8 months long, do that.
Yeah.
You'll be great. You'll be thankful that you did. So
Mhm. I completely agree. Thank you so much, Katie.
thanks so much. It was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me on this.